Welcome to another episode of Music Therapy. I am John Thune, your resident mental health therapist, and today we are listening to your recommended song of REN Chapter 1. I'm excited. I heard this gets really detailed and in-depth, so let's get right into it, y'all. Please like, subscribe, and comment below. It really helps the algorithm for me.
Hello everyone. This is the first time I've done something like this before. I wanted to write it down because there's a lot and I didn't want to miss anything. And some parts of this might be a little bit uncomfortable to listen to, but I wanted to stay as true as possible to the story, not miss anything, for the sake of people who might be going through something similar, or for the sake of people who don't but want to help understand a little bit more. Yeah. I promise that everything in this story is 100% true. Nothing is exaggerated for dramatic effect. Some names I don't mention and some details I don't go too far into or downplay them for the sake of the people around me. Timelines might occasionally be a little bit off, but that's just because I've had to write everything from memory from a time that was quite hazy. I asked before embarking on this journey with me that you all respect the privacy of myself and the people around me. You might be compelled to reach out to some of the people that I mention, cast judgment, praise them, criticize them, and I ask you kindly not to. It's my choice to be in the public eye, and it's mine alone. This is the first time my story is on the public record in a concise way. Being in the public eye is strange. The more that I give to you, the less that I get to keep for myself. I don't find the experience of sharing particularly enjoyable. I don't so much like the questions that follow, and I'm not a medical expert, so I don't like...
I really appreciate what he's saying here, is that when you're on a public platform, it is so difficult to have any semblance of privacy. And it's so important, and it's so much easier for someone without a public platform to share their vulnerabilities, their emotions, without being criticized, without being castigated, because you don't have that range. And it should be easier, theoretically, to share your experiences when you're not on a public platform, but it still feels so hard at times.
I don't so much like the questions that follow, and I'm not a medical expert, so I don't like to be seen as somebody with all the answers, because I don't have them. And because of the empathy that I feel, I'm compelled to try and help as many people as possible. But the last time I opened myself up to this on a one-on-one basis, I was surrounded by a lot of death, and there simply weren't enough hours in the day. So I ask you, if you need support, please reach out to a professional or use my music as your companion. I share my story in hopes that somebody who needs it finds it, that it provides hope, that it might ease the suffering for the people like me. I like my solitude, so I ask that anyone who respects the work I make and respects my contribution to the world to respect my solitude.
Love it. That's where he goes.
A lot happened in my teenage years, and I didn't live the most normal of lives, but I'll save that story for another time. The important thing to contextualize this story is that I was full of life. I was full of a burning desire to change the world. The flaws in how we interact seemed obvious to me. I believed in people's power to change the unnecessary suffering we inflict upon ourselves. I was also enamored with music.
Wow, I love how he says that he has been driven and passionate from a young age. I was always wondering that, if he was always like this or if something changed. Seems like he knew from a young age what we do right and what we do wrong and how to fix it. And that's a really powerful... Music is a powerful tool to express that.
The unnecessary suffering we inflict upon ourselves. I was also enamored with music. Music is the closest thing to God that I have. It's a gateway to the unexplainable, and it's a way of...
Oh, it's so powerful. I'm getting emotional just watching this. Like, we all have these flow states, and where we get into this period where time goes really fast and it dilates, and it just happens. And yeah, what's your higher power? Is it, is it sport? Is it love? Is it family? I mean, I think it's so important to have that X factor in your life.
Music is the closest thing to God that I have. It's a gateway to the unexplainable, and it's a way of communicating the inexpressible. There's just one moment I want to share with you from the years before I got sick. I was 17 and I felt indestructible. I'm not sure why, but my whole life I had this feeling inside myself that I was meant to do something important, not for myself, not for praise, not for personal gain, but something that would change the world for the better. It's hard to describe it without coming across like an egomaniac or having some sort of God complex, but I felt like I had some sort of divine purpose. And I remember feeling this so strongly that one afternoon after school, I stood in the centre of my bedroom and I spoke loud into an empty void. I said that I would single-handedly take on and defeat the forces of evil, and I welcomed them to try their best.
Wow. Yeah, so it's normal to have these feelings of invincibility at that age, but he does have some grandiose thinking here that he's going to single-handedly take on the forces of evil. And while that may seem like an overall great goal, it's really kind of impossible for any one person to do that. And you need to specify a little bit more, make it specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Those are SMART goals. And if you set something so broad, it's really hard to measure. But he is, making something beautiful to combat the forces of evil. And he is so many people's companion, and his music is so therapeutic.
Said that I would single-handedly take on and defeat the forces of evil, and I welcome them to try their best. Throughout the years, that memory stuck with me, taunting me sometimes. Flash forward to 2019. I remember the first day I knew something was wrong very well. I woke up in an unfamiliar room in Cardiff, feeling like a raven had perched itself upon my heart. Every time my heart beat, it's like some part of me was aware of the foreboding death sentence that was to come. Some sort of primal instinctive dread. Everything felt wrong, and I felt prosthetic, like I could tear my own skin off and observe, though I was watching passively from another room. The night before,
Wow, I was not expecting this dystopian imagery here where he is going and suffering, and he had that aha moment. He knew something was very wrong and needed to change it, and it sucks that he had to go through all this suffering.
Tear my own skin off and observe, though I was watching passively from another room. The night before, I'd been in Cardiff visiting friends in university. It was the end of summer, we'd gone out to a few bars. I wasn't really enjoying myself. That year I'd been struggling with social anxiety, perhaps from years of abusing my brain with a whole pick and mix and selection of party drugs.
Wow, I had no idea REN was using recreationally. So he kind of blames himself for some of the suffering he's feeling. And this is what we see a lot of times. I've worked in a lot of addiction recovery centers, and it's like we like to find the pleasure in pain. And so, for instance, if we feel a lot of pleasure through drugs, then we think a reciprocal amount of pain is going to be necessary. And so sometimes people will literally torture themselves after abusing drugs just because they want to feel the lows just as much as the highs.
Engaging with society felt like stepping into the ring with a heavyweight champion. Every single fucking question felt like an oncoming haymaker I had to socially navigate because of my very limited toolkit of charisma at the time.
Oh, I love that too. The hypervigilance that comes along with drug use and feeling like you're in pain and suffering unduly.
I don't know why I cared about being liked so much, but the more I cared, the less equipped I became to have a simple human conversation. I used to deal with this by getting fucking hammered. That night was no exception. I got smashed, lost my phone, and woke up in a strange apartment. In the bed opposite mine was a snoring rugby player and his girlfriend.
Wow. So I'm wondering if he's regretting that, or...
Hey, man.
Everything just seemed off, and it wasn't a hangover. My first thought was I'd been spiked. I quietly gathered all my belongings and left before anyone could wake up and punch me with a conversation. I wandered around the grey Cardiff in the haze, feeling like I've just been rigged up to an IV bag full of ketamine and cyanide, and the whole world just seemed off, like I was looking at it through a tunnel. A heavy feeling of fear clung around me like a straitjacket. The only comforting thought was that with enough time, rest and water, it would pass. But it didn't. For 8 long years, it didn't.
Wow.
And this is my story of an 8-year-long nightmare. I returned back to my dad's home. He was living with his partner at the time. It wasn't my home, so I already felt uncomfortable and out of place. These unusual symptoms persisted. I figured I'd caught some sort of virus and I'd get better with time. But by the end of the week, things were a lot worse. I took myself to the doctor and he said he thought it sounded viral, that if I went home and got enough rest, it would eventually pass. And it didn't. For 8 years, it didn't. I returned for my second year of university. My brain was full of fog and my body felt poisoned. There were intermittent days where I felt like a hollow suit of skin. I'd sit in lectures unable to focus and was devoid of any sort of personality.
His imagery is so powerful. I love that he wrote this out. It's kind of like poetry.
I'd be able to have basic conversations, yeses and nos, but I was stripped of the ability to think spontaneously. It's like my body was taking up so much processing power being sick that I could not have original or spontaneous thought. The most peculiar thing about this was there was a me that was aware that this was all happening.
This is what we see when people get into the survival mode, is they don't have the ability to live and be creative and be joyous. They just start fighting for their basic needs. And his body was diverting all the blood, all the energy to fight off this virus or fight off this sickness. And it's expending. I mean, it takes up a ton of energy.
And was observing it from outside of myself, locked out, screaming silently, banging on the walls of my mind to be let in, and never successfully. And nonetheless, there I was, like a ghost haunting myself. My usual routine was getting home, running a shower and curling up into a ball to cry underneath the running water, not understanding what was going on. I brought myself to the doctors numerous times during this period, requesting every blood test they'd let me have, often being dismissed and told things like stress from university can cause strange symptoms. But how come no one I knew in university could relate to this? Eventually, I was put on a 6-month-long waiting list to see a mental health specialist who did a short 1-page questionnaire and wrongly diagnosed me as hypercycling bipolar and put me on a course of citalopram.
Wow, that is criminal. And he's highlighting a lot of the problems of our medical system. Misdiagnosis, downplaying severity of symptoms. Lyme's disease is super underdiagnosed, and it's not something that psychiatrists or PCPs will regularly diagnose. And so because it is like a rarer diagnosis, it often gets pushed under the rug. And it's great that he's advocating for himself here, and he's requesting these blood tests. He's seeking out help time after time again, because it's so important in our crooked healthcare system to shop around. So if you don't like a therapist the first time, go back for one more session, but then, call it an end to it, shop around for another. If one doctor, for instance, diagnoses you as something, you can go to a different doctor that you relate to a lot better, who you can feel like you can give the whole picture to. So it's so important to be your advocate in our healthcare system like he's being, and be relentless, because it is exhausting, it is financially cumbersome, it is not ideal, but no one's going to advocate for your mental and physical health unless you do.
And wrongly diagnosed me as hypercycling bipolar and put me on a course of citalopram. After a few weeks, it stole my ability to sleep.
And thinking about his recreational drug use and then his prescription drug use, the damage that wrongly misdiagnosis can bring is real too.
I was told to stick it out and it would level out, and eventually I'd feel more like myself. I stuck it out and I got worse, and I pulled myself off it after 2 weeks in a row of sleepless nights and insomnia.
Whew. This is emotional, and it's so funny that some of the mental health people think that they can get to know you and diagnose you on a 1-page questionnaire. That's just so comically ignorant, in my opinion. Just 1 page does not depict who you are as an entire person. You have to really sit down with someone, get to know them for hundreds of hours, not 1 hour, not 1 page. I mean, that's comical.
There's something pretty peculiar about being told you're in some sort of spectrum of madness. Even if you suspect that you're mad, your diagnosis finds a way to claw itself into your identity, even if it doesn't belong to you. Ever since I was a child, I'd always be asking what and why and how things worked. I couldn't really accept things as they were without knowing how. I carried into my adult years, and so as the bipolar hammer crashed and sentenced itself into my reality, I began searching online for behaviours associated with it, people's first-hand experiences, what it felt like to be manic. In these earlier days of my illness, the symptoms would fluctuate in severity day by day.
What this can do, if you're looking up symptoms of your alleged diagnosis, it can amplify them. If you look up symptoms of mania, for instance, and you see restlessness, insomnia, thinking that everything's a good idea even though it's not, then you perhaps will even start acting out on those symptoms. And it becomes this echo chamber, and that's how online communities can be a breeding ground for symptoms in cases of like bipolar or ADHD.
In these earlier days of my illness, the symptoms would fluctuate in severity day by day. Some days I'd be in a thick, tired fog, and other days they'd be more merciful. I began to associate the days of not suffering as mania and would act more erratically on the days that my symptoms were less bothersome. I did things like climbing out of windows of a 6-story student accommodation or get so drunk I'd wake up outside of the university campus lawn.
Wow.
But it wasn't mania. I just wasn't hurting. I spent one day a week with my...
Wow. So he is engaging in high-risk behavior. That's a symptom of mania too, but it's also... It's not mania to him. It is really him just trying to regain control of his life. And that's what drinking and substance use can do, is it can give you that temporary illusion of control. And sitting on that 5-story, 6-story building, that's terrifying. And that can really do damage with one wrong stroke. Holy heck, I'm glad he's here and alive today.
A therapist who was teaching me cognitive behavioural therapy. Mm-hmm. The issue was mentally reframing unexplainable symptoms caused a lot of cognitive dissonance for me. Mm-hmm. I was told my anxiety or depression was causing my symptoms.
Yeah, so a mental health therapist isn't going to be able to help a medical problem like Ren has here too much. And cognitive dissonance is a fancy term for cognitive discord, where there is inconsistency with your beliefs and your behaviors.
But in reality, it was my symptoms which were making me anxious and depressed. Mm-hmm. So I was in some sort of inescapable bind. I'd devotedly work on my mental health, following every new tool for coping to the letter, only to have my symptoms get worse, which made me frustrated, raise the intensity of my treatment, only to get even more frustrated as my body seemed to deteriorate.
Wow.
After 6 months, I told my mum I'd happily saw off my own leg with a blunt knife if it meant my symptoms would vanish, and I meant it. I told her if I had to live with this strange feeling for one more year, I'd kill myself.
Wow.
And I meant that too. But something happened that winter which showed me firsthand the horrors and the fallout from suicide. I met Joe when I was...
Wow, I didn't know that this all happened at the same time. And oh my gosh, it's making me tear up here is seeing him rather cut off his leg than live another year. And the suicidal ideation just come into the forefront. Wow, this is the scary thing about people is that when one thing goes wrong and another thing goes sideways at the same time, it can really compound really quickly. And so it's so important to try to work on things one at a time and not let the physical pain paired with the suicide of his friend get to him. But obviously I had no idea that at the same time. This must have been a really difficult time for Ren here.
And the fallout from suicide. I met Joe when I was 9 years old. I remember the first time clearly. I was standing in his living room when he turned to me and he was like, "Watch this." Then he proceeded to climb on top of his sofa and did a front flip onto a stone living room floor. He landed on his back and lay motionless for a few seconds before grinning, getting up, and then doing it all over again.
Oh my gosh.
We grew up terrorising the streets of the small village we grew up in, playing knock door run or breaking into people's gardens to play on their trampolines. We stayed friends throughout high school, going through various phases together. Joe was comedian of the group. I remember countless mornings after messy all-nighters, Joe would be cracking endless jokes like a professional stand-up routine, and we'd all be in tears laughing. When I started writing my first songs, Joe and Sega were the first people who always knew every word, and they would sing along at the top of their lungs. They gave me a lot of self-belief, and they helped me build the foundation of what I do today, and I owe them a lot for that. That Christmas, I came back home to Wales from university. On Christmas Eve, me and Joe were sat in a pub, and he turned to me, and he told me that he'd fantasised about walking into the sea until he was totally submerged. He had a pretty morbid sense of humour, so I didn't really take him as seriously as I should have. 2 days later, it's 3 a.m, and I get a phone call. It's my friend Ella. She tells me that Joe is on the bridge by my house. He was drunk, he'd called her up, and he told her he was going to jump. I was still half asleep. I fumbled, pulling on whatever clothes I could that were near, and I walked out of the front door, and the winter air stung my face, and it woke me up. Adrenaline kicked in, and I started sprinting towards the bridge. It was about a 5-minute walk, a 2.5-minute sprint. As I was running, I dialed Joe's number, and I get a busy tone, and I felt relief because it meant he was still alive. I kept hitting redial as I ran, and as I got about halfway to the bridge, the busy tone changes. I get an automated voice note saying the number's out of service, and my heart sunk. I got to the suspension bridge that connects Anglesey to the mainland, and it usually looks very beautiful. I sprint up and down the bridge yelling Joe's name, and silence, and it's deafening. and I peer over the bridge into the blackness, and the bridge sits about 100 feet above the water. Hitting cold water at that height is like smashing into concrete.
Yeah.
And the waters are notoriously dangerous because of the cross current. I hear nothing, no sounds, nothing. I run up and down the bridge about 2 times before I spot a figure at the end of it, and my heart jumps into my throat, and I run towards the figure, and it's my friend Ricky who's had the same call, and we both run around up and down the bridge and around the surrounding area looking for Joe. More of his friends eventually arrive, and there's nothing.
Wow.
I was about a minute too late. We spent the next week walking up and down beaches with flashlights, and when it's that dark, every other large rock starts to look like a washed up body. We plastered all the neighbouring towns in missing posters, contacting whoever we could, someone who might know something. We checked bank records to see if any money had been withdrawn since he went missing. There was CCTV footage of him walking onto the bridge, but there wasn't any of him coming off. But there were dead zones in the footage, so there was still a small chance he could be alive. I was sleeping about 3 hours a night, pretty determined that we'd still find him. For about 10 days...
Wow, this is all paired with his Lyme's disease and the physical symptoms just absolutely worsening too. So this is a mental and physical torture for REN.
We had nothing, and then suddenly a call comes through while we're all at my friend Miles's house having food. It's the police. A body had been found in the water by the bridge. We piled into my friend's car. I remember being in the back seat in floods of tears, repetitively punching the back of the passenger seat as we drove to the scene. As we pull up, I saw a lifeless body being zipped up into a green bag near a parked ambulance. Its skin was bloated by the seawater, and it wasn't Joe. Someone else decided to jump that day. Joe was never found. It's difficult to truly let go when you can't say goodbye. For months following, I held on to this fantasy that we'd get a call that he'd run away to some European town, and he was happy and he was healthy.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, he's feeling a bit of survivor's guilt here, and this is a common phenomenon when you experience a suicide close to you. And he didn't get to say goodbye, so he's still holding on hope, even though it's highly unlikely. And you can hear him say, you can hear the pain in his voice when he's crying and saying he was 1 minute too late. You know, it's so hard to quantify it and say, 60 seconds faster, I would have made it there and been able to save my best friend and my biggest supporter. Because that's, who knows if it was 1 minute or 5, it's so hard to know.
But that call never came. The time during his inquest was also around the time I was struggling with the side effects of a new antidepressant. Mm-hmm. I remember sitting in the courtroom feeling like I was listening to the whole thing deep underwater. The judge felt the circumstances surrounding Joe's death didn't mean The judge felt that the circumstances surrounding Joe's death meant that the verdict was left open. It kind of stung even more to not have an official ruling of suicide. I remember going to visit his mum not long after and witnessing that.
Wow, right. He wants to call it what it is and acknowledge that his friend committed suicide, but legally it's not enough evidence. They don't know, so they're not going to say it was. And so that is a slap in the face to some degree, in the face of mental health, in the face of other people who jump off that bridge and commit suicide or attempt suicide. And there's a stigma to mental health, and unless you can prove it, that it was a suicide, then it's not going to be deemed one legally. And that does skew statistics a little bit in terms of suicide rates in the U.S. and across the world. So typically they're underestimated because of them not being able to be proven, because you cannot really know someone's intention in the last moment of their life when they're dead. It's impossible to speculate upon.
Suicide. I remember going to visit his mum not long after and witnessing the aftermath of a mother grieving for her baby boy. The silence of his father, the tears of his mother. I decided that day that I'd have to wait until my illness killed me because I couldn't do it by choice.
Wow, I love how he says that here. The silence of his father and the tears of his mother. Sometimes that silence is where men suffer the most, where people suffer the most. They detach, disassociate, and they just go cold. And when that silence hits that father, he is in a lot of pain. He may not be expressing it, but dang well, he's feeling it.
I decided that day that I'd have to wait until my illness killed me because I couldn't do it by choice. I couldn't put my family through.
Wow, I had no idea that this was a protective factor for him, that it helped him stay alive throughout this illness of Lyme disease. And I hate to say it like this, but Joe's suicide kind of had a positive effect on Ren here. Is that Ren didn't have the urge to commit suicide because he knows dang well firsthand the impact that it has on other people in his life, and he doesn't want to subject him to that. So Joe is a legend for supporting Ren, for being there, throughout his life, but he's also a legend for showing Ren what not to do. This is so emotional. Oh my goodness.
Through that. Over the next 10 years, I returned to my hometown, only a handful of times following Joe's death. My last visit was in the summer of last year. I reconnected with Joe's parents and showed them a song that I'd written, simply entitled For Joe. We cried together, reminisced together, joked, and I'm proud to say that I gave Joe's mum enough money to afford a caravan she told me she'd been saving up for. That felt pretty good. We'd also do a fundraiser for the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, who were integral for searching for Joe during that time, and we raised a pretty good amount of money too. Being able to give back in whatever small way I could felt good, and it felt right for all the years Joe had made us all laugh till it hurt. He was a solid person, just a little lost, as we all are sometimes. And I miss him. Life was about to take an even more unusual turn, and I was about to meet the first angel of this story. So stay tuned for that.
Oh my gosh, I'm tearing up here. It's so powerful that Ren was able to help out his family, to create this song, but then to also give back to other people struggling, and the search and rescue crews that go out there and find bodies weekly, daily in some cases. And I'm so excited for this song, and also really excited to hear about the angel in this story. Because to me, Ren sounds like the angel of this story in terms of the impact on Joe's family and the overall awareness around it. Wow, you can hear the pain in his voice.
It's hard to take off from the ground when your wings are cut. Your stomach burns when you're drinking from an empty cup. You know the entire ocean came from my tear ducts. I see the world through Fibonacci sequences and double Dutch. I guess there's some that's born lucky, there's some that's not. I tried to cut away my bitterness, hatchet job. I locked my youth inside the trunk, inside the pickup truck, then dumped that whole thing over that same bridge the night you jumped. I think about that sometimes, vividly. What it felt like to look down and see tranquility. One sudden movement in a world of possibility. Only one movement to expose our fragility. I fucking miss you, and I miss myself.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the idea that he lost a part of himself when Joe died, and yeah, oh my goodness. And that Joe, yeah, oh my goodness, so powerful.
I think about that sometimes, vividly.
That is a flashback right there, right? We see this in PTSD all the time, and Ren definitely has some PTSD, flashing back to Joe's last night on that bridge.
What it felt like to look down and see tranquility. One sudden movement in a world of possibility.
And this idea that, like, in this hectic, crazy world, that, jumping off that bridge is peace. But, I mean, it's peace, it's a closure for that person, but it spreads that pain and suffering to everyone you love.
Only one movement to expose our fragility. I I fucking miss you. And I miss myself. I miss thinking we were indestructible as hell. I miss chilling by the pier cave and kicking back with Callum, Hugo, Justin, Sega, Stevie and the fucking lads. I miss missing that. I numb myself to close the gap. I never even call them up. Distance is my plaster cast to tell the truth. The day you jumped, my childhood jumped too. But
that's an interesting statement there, that distance is his plaster cast. That he doesn't go back to his city after Joe committed suicide, because it reminds him of that suicide just by proximity, by being near that bridge, by being in that city. And sometimes avoidance and setting healthy boundaries and distancing is the best thing he can do. And being there is only going to re-traumatize him. So it's really important, I think, to grieve and distance yourself in your own time and not, be unstable with people who are also unstable. You got to heal and grieve by yourself sometimes, but also it helps with other people. It's, oh my gosh.
Still can't find the angle. All I find is missing you, man. I miss you. With all my rhymes, I picture running 5 minutes quicker, I'm right on time. I picture pulling you back over the edge and then we're crying, and holding you, my brother, and telling you that it's fine, not the way that it worked. I was late like a jerk. There's not a day where I can find a way to break from the hurt. Your body missing, so we never got to wave to the hearse. I hope you're listening. I love you, man. I miss you, absurd. Fuck.
This song is such a great resource for those who have lost someone. Really can be therapeutic to hear this and listen to the story and cry and process it.
Another domino, it falls. Across the way another's born. How you're supposed to raise a child and give it courage from a storm. In a world that is confusing, contradictions pave our flaws. Some will say we're only human, others judge us for our flaws. Some get born in sheets of satin, some get by in tattered clothes. Some will die before they live, that's just how the story goes. But for those of us still with us, who reside inside our hearts, tell them proudly how you feel. And for those of us who aren't, freckled angels stand strong, freckled angels live on, freckled angels climb higher, freckled angels still inspire, freckled angels won't forget you, teach me to live my life better. 13 years and still I miss you, now my wings are missing feather, otherwise I'd come and join you. But for now I'm here on earth, stuck inside this mortal body, but for everything it's worth. Made me braver, made me wiser, made me stronger, made me true, made me face the world with courage, and that's all because of you.
Wow. So in that moment, right, of therapy, when he had Lyme's disease, reframing wasn't helping him. It's not gonna help to say that, to reframe your physical pain. That's not gonna help. But he is reframing Joe's death here, and he did learn something from therapy. He went hard in therapy. You can tell, because a lot of his songs have this immense suffering, followed by grief, bereavement, all the negative feelings or emotions around it. And then he reframes it to be something meaningful, something of purpose. And to be able to attribute a lot of his qualities to Joe and his friend and his suicide is so amazing, that he can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Courage, and that's all because of you. Mortal body, but for everything it's worth. Made me braver, made me wiser, made me stronger, made me true, made me face the world with courage, and that's all because of you. Freckled angels laugh the hardest, and their hearts, they are the largest. With their wings, they fly the farthest. So I know you're gonna be okay. Freckled angels live the longest, and their minds, they are the strongest. Oh, their friends, they are the fondest. So I know you're gonna be okay.
The pain in his voice there. Ooh. Wow. So powerful. And we know clinically that when you face something and you can overcome, you're a lot better off than if you avoid and run away from it. So, challenge you, listener. What are you avoiding that you need to do? The work is often found in the things we are avoiding the hardest, and the growth that we need is in what we're avoiding. What a powerful song. I'm so excited for the next few chapters. Really, it's so powerful. Emotionally vulnerable. I wasn't expecting it to be as detailed, but I'm so glad that Ren is able to make something beautiful from something traumatic. Because initially he had those flashbacks, that hypervigilance, that, you know, grieving process and survivor's guilt, and now he's at the point where he's like, I'm braver because I knew you. I'm the fondest friend because I experienced your love, and that's a great reframe. What a great grieving resource, incredible song, and I love how it ended there with him making something beautiful from an otherwise shitstorm of events. But thank you so much for listening to another episode of Music Therapy. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps me a lot. And I look forward to seeing you in the next Music Therapy episode.